A question I'm asked quite frequently by the betrayed spouse is, Samuel, my unfaithful spouse refuses to get help. Why does he or she not want to at least get help? I mean, it seems so elementary that they would at least get help. And it's a difficult question. Not for me, but it's difficult because there's a variety of answers. And so today I want to take the approach of, when the unfaithful spouse refuses to get help. And then in the future, I'll talk about why the betrayed spouse would refuse to get help. The first reason why an unfaithful spouse would refuse to get help, and I'm going to give you probably the most controversial, most direct one first, and that's because what I have learned, and I think Rick and many therapists would agree, when a spouse refuses to get help, it's a lot of times, not all the time, but very frequently that they know that what they're doing is wrong and they don't want to have to answer for it. It's just one of those things that oftentimes an unfaithful spouse doesn't want to get help because they know that they're out of line, they know that what they're doing is wrong, they know that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and they don't want to have someone kind of rain on their parade. They don't want to have to be accountable. They don't want the embarrassment per se. They just don't want to stop what they're doing because what they are doing is wrong and they know it and they don't want to have to answer for it. Another reason why the unfaithful spouse refuses to get help is because they don't want to have to decide what they want to do. If they're still involved with the affair partner, they're kind of in this limbo and they like it. They don't want to have to decide. They don't want to have to commit either way. It's kind of like, look, I don't want to have to take action. And sometimes what fuels that mentality is they feel justified in their affair. They maybe felt rejected by their spouse. They felt rejected sexually, emotionally. They felt like they were always criticized and attacked. And so they feel like, look, I'm injured too. I've been wounded, so I have this affair. And you know what? You weren't going to meet my needs, so this person's going to meet my needs, and I'm not ready to quit yet. And so there can be a very self-righteous mentality that kind of says, and I know it's hard to believe if you're a betrayed spouse, but it's understandable in terms of the way their mind works. It's kind of like, look, you didn't want to meet my needs, so I'm getting my needs met here, and I'm not ready to decide. Finally, I feel whole, or finally I feel affirmed, or all of these different things that I understand them. They're not necessarily true, though. It's the justifications that they have built up in their own mind and heart to justify their affair. Another reason an unfaithful spouse would refuse to get help is because in their mind, they think getting help is assuming that they have to make a decision about either saving their marriage or ending their marriage and going to be with their affair partner, or just ending their marriage and kind of riding off into the sunset of singlehood. They think that if I go get help, I'm going to have to make a decision, and I'm not ready to make a decision yet. And again, it reverts back to all of the different defenses and justifications and rationalizations they have made about their infidelity or infidelities, and so they're not ready to decide. And they feel like if I agree to get help, I'm committing to the marriage, which isn't true at all. Deciding to get expert help just means that you are being a bigger person and you are deciding to get help to see what possibilities there are. You're deciding, and it has to be expert help, but you would be deciding to get expert help to at least explore possibilities and see what options there are before you make a decision that's going to radically transform the life of your kids if you have kids, or at least you and your spouse for the rest of your time here on earth. Another reason is sometimes, and this doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes an unfaithful spouse will refuse to get help because they had a terrible experience with a therapist. It may have even been when they were young and they felt like they were traumatized or violated, or it really went horribly wrong. And so they have this fear of ever going to therapy again. And I tell people, man, it's a valid fear. However, when you come this way, if you come towards a fair recovery or coaching session with me or what have you, you're dealing with expert care. You're not dealing with general care or rookies who've never been through infidelity and don't know how to handle it. And so it's vital that if you're talking to an unfaithful spouse, asking them to get help, it's going to have to be in a safe environment for both spouses, and that's probably going to require dealing with an expert who's been through infidelity and has treated it for a significant amount of time with great success. A couple of more reasons is sometimes an unfaithful spouse doesn't want to spend the money to get help. It's understandable, but the reality is you're going to have to spend money if you want to get help. You can't not invest in your marriage or in your recovery, even if you're going to divorce, if you want to do it right. And if you want to minimize the trauma and minimize the incredible amounts of hurt and pain for if there's kids, or for even just the spouse and each other, you're going to have to invest in expert help, and it's going to cost you money. For some, it's a culture thing. Some cultures are really apprehensive to get professional help. There's a stigma attached to professional counseling. And I understand that, but again, this is a point where, look, if we're going to be able to get help, we're going to have to do what we've never done if we want results we've never had before. Another reason the unfaithful won't get help is they're convinced if they go to a therapist, and unfortunately there's 1,000 stories of this actually happening, but the unfaithful is convinced if they go get help, like an EMS weekend that I talk about often, or even an expert therapist, that they're going to be blasted and humiliated and shamed and condemned and attacked and marginalized for their affair. And again, that's why you really have to get expert help, because an expert is not going to do that. Another reason why an unfaithful spouse won't get help is sometimes their affair partner won't let them. Now, you may say, well, won't let them, they're an adult. I get that, but it's very common for the affair partner to shame and attack and even kind of have their own little blackmail situation with the spouse to say, if you go get help, that means this and we're done. And so there's all this different confusion surrounding the decision to get help. The reality is, a lot of what I've shared today, in many ways, sure, they're excuses. But more than just that, they're reasonings that the unfaithful use to not get help. I don't believe that any one of them would create a legitimate barrier to finding expert help and being able to move forward, even if they are involved with their affair partner. There is a way, there's a safe process to get help. Now, with absolute certainty, you cannot work on the marriage if the unfaithful spouse is still involved with their affair partner. You can't for the long run, not at all. But in the short run, I promise you, you can do recovery work if you'll get the right help, because in the short run, in the early kind of onset of recovery work, there is a way to get expert help to be able to start to get clarity and insight and sober up and start to make some decisions eventually. The big lie is you have to decide right now what you want to do, and I will tell you as a survivor and as someone who's gone through it, that's not the case. If you get the right kind of help, you can do some early recovery work that will begin to chart a course in which direction you would like to go, and I'll talk about that more next time.